After my son's funeral, I never once mentioned the second house, nor the $2 million he left me. A week later, my daughter-in-law said, "Pack your things. This house has been sold." I only smiled. I had prepared for this moment. But those were not my belongings. "I'm glad you're here. Stay until the end and tell me what city you're listening from. I want to know how far this story has traveled." I stood there, in front of Daniel's polished wooden casket, my heart shattered. The crowd quietly passed by, nodding, whispering condolences. Everything blurred like a cold wind. Daniel, my son who used to laugh and talk, who used to hug me so tightly every time he came to visit, now he lay still. That cruel illness had taken him away. After months of exhausting battles, I looked at the photo on his casket. Those kind eyes seemed to still be searching for me, trying to say something, but all that remained was the heavy silence pressing down on my chest. Beside me, Rachel, my daughter-in-law, held Emily tightly. The child sobbed, shoulders trembling with each hiccup. "It's just us now," Rachel repeated, her voice choked. I felt moved and confused. Rachel, usually strong and sharp, looked as though she might collapse. Emily stayed silent, her eyes swollen and red, clutching her phone as if it were her last anchor. I wanted to reach out and hold them both, to say I was still here, that we would get through this together, but my throat locked up. No words came out. Mrs. Miller, my neighbor for many years, stepped up and laid her wrinkled hand on my shoulder. "Rachel is very strong," she whispered kindly. "Your son would rest easy knowing that." I nodded slightly, forcing a faint smile while my heart felt hollow. Rest easy. How could Daniel rest easy? My son was gone far too soon, leaving a void nothing could ever fill. As people slowly drifted away and the service grew quiet, Rachel came over and took my hand. Her hand was ice cold, but her eyes were resolute. "Mom," she rasped, "this house is too big, too expensive. I think we should sell." I hadn't even answered before she continued, quick and firm, as if the decision had long been made. "Sell it, then we'll move to somewhere smaller. We'll need money for Emily's college. Daniel is gone. We can't keep carrying this house." Her words cut into me. Not because of the idea of selling, but because of the way she said it so decisive, as if my opinion no longer mattered. I looked at Emily, hoping she would say something, but she only kept her head down, her fingers moving across her phone, lips pressed tight. I placed my hand on Rachel's shoulder and gave a small nod, not out of agreement, but because I didn't want to argue on a day when my spirit was already broken. The pastor's voice echoed, calling everyone for the final rite. I stepped aside, away from the crowd. Suddenly, an attendant brushed against me by accident, nearly knocking me over. In that instant, I heard Rachel whisper to someone, "After the funeral, I have to deal with the estate. Such a hassle." I froze. My heart stopped. Daniel's estate, our family's legacy, was nothing but a hassle to her? I told myself maybe I misheard, maybe it was the noise. But those words echoed in my mind like an open wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. I wanted to confront her, but my feet felt nailed to the ground. All I could do was watch Rachel continue her conversation, her face still draped in sorrow as if nothing had happened. When the service ended, I returned to the house that was now only mine. The spacious living room, once filled with Daniel's laughter, felt unbearably cold. I sat down in the old chair where he used to watch TV, letting the emptiness swallow me whole. The family photos on the wooden shelf, the belongings Daniel left behind, all of it reminded me he was truly gone. I buried my face in my hands, tears flowing uncontrollably. I had not only lost Daniel, but also the sense of safety in the family I had built all these years. That night, the doorbell rang. I quickly wiped my tears and opened the door. Rachel and Emily stood there, arms full of suitcases. Rachel looked at me, her gaze softened. "Mom, you shouldn't be alone. It's dangerous. I think it's best if we stay with you." I already gave up the lease on my apartment. I was surprised, but I didn't refuse. I nodded, fetched extra blankets and pillows for them, and arranged sleeping spaces. I thought maybe it was the right thing to do. Rachel and Emily were grieving too. They needed a place of refuge, just like I did. Perhaps the three of us could lean on one another to get through these harsh days. I looked at Emily, still silent, her gaze lost, and I silently promised myself I would do everything to protect her, just as Daniel always had. The next morning, dim sunlight filtered through the curtains, falling across the old wooden floor. I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands trembling, my heart unbearably heavy. The house was too quiet. No Daniel's laughter, no hurried footsteps in the morning. I decided to open his old dresser, hoping to find some trace of him. The wood creaked, the musty smell drifted out, pulling me back to the days when Daniel was little, rummaging for his toys. I pulled out shirts, his watch, a few books. Each item felt like a knife to the heart. Then I saw it, a thick envelope hidden in the drawer. My heartbeat thundered. I opened it. Inside were legal documents, a savings book, and a handwritten letter. I recognized Daniel's handwriting, instantly steady, full of emotion. "Mom, if you're reading this, it probably means I'm no longer here. I'm sorry I couldn't stay with you longer. I've left you the house in Boston and my savings account, $2 million. Mom, I trust you'll know how to protect it. Don't let Rachel know. I don't trust her anymore. She has changed." Many nights I overheard her talking about money, about selling the house, as if everything in our family was just for her to use. "I don't want you or Emily in her hands. Keep this secret until you think it's necessary. I love you, and I believe you'll protect Emily for me." I read it again and again, tears streaming. Daniel, my son, even when facing death, he thought of me, of Emily, but Rachel, she could not be trusted. His words made me shiver. I once thought Rachel was strong, capable, just a little distant, but her, such a hassle at the funeral, and now this letter, left my mind in turmoil. I wanted to believe Daniel was wrong, that Rachel was just grieving like me. But doubt had already taken root. The sound of footsteps on the stairs startled me. I quickly tucked the envelope into my pocket, my heart pounding. Rachel walked in, her lips curled in a faint smile, but her eyes were icy. "Mom, today I'm planning to change the locks on the front door. The old keys aren't safe anymore." I forced my voice to stay calm, though my hands shook. "These keys still work, dear. Don't change them." I didn't even know why I said it. Maybe instinct. Maybe because of the letter I felt I had to stay cautious. Rachel glanced at me, annoyance flashing in her eyes, then forced a smile. "You're too careless. I just want the house to be safer." She turned away, but I saw her hands clenched into fists. I stood there, heavy with the feeling that the invisible wall between us was growing thicker. At noon, I gathered all my courage and called Attorney Harris, Daniel's old friend, the man he mentioned in his letter. His warm voice came through the phone, and we agreed to meet a few days later at a discreet cafe. I didn't dare say much, afraid Rachel might overhear. When I hung up, it felt like I had stepped into a chess game without knowing the rules. I went to the market, hoping to blend into the crowd, to ease my heart, but Mrs. Miller caught my arm and whispered, Rachel said you agreed to sell the house. Is that true? I froze, as if doused with cold water. Rachel had already told the neighbors? So soon? I shook my head, trying to keep my voice steady. I haven't decided anything, Mrs. Miller. No rush. She nodded, but her curious eyes made me even more uneasy. I went back home, suspicion weighing heavily. What was Rachel hiding from me? That evening, Emily timidly came into my room, setting down an old photo on the table. Daniel smiled in the picture, carrying little Emily on his shoulders. "Dad used to say he wanted to protect you," she whispered, voice trembling, "but he never got the chance." Her words tore through me. I touched the photo, remembering the letter. "Sleep, sweetheart," I whispered, swallowing my tears. "Don't worry about it." But inside, I knew I couldn't let things slide. Daniel had entrusted me with a responsibility, and I wouldn't fail him. That night, I hid the envelope under my pillow like a treasure. I tiptoed to the kitchen for some water, careful not to wake anyone. But passing the living room, I heard Rachel's voice from behind a half-closed door. "Don't worry," she said firmly into the phone. "Just a few more weeks and it'll be done." I froze, gripping the glass in my hand. Done? Was she talking about selling the house or something more? I couldn't be sure. I wanted to step in, to demand answers, but my legs wouldn't move. I went back to my room and lay awake all night, tormented by Daniel's letter and Rachel's words. I knew I was facing a dangerous secret, a secret Daniel had tried so hard to shield me from. The next morning, the smell of coffee drifted through the kitchen. Rachel was up early, laying out breakfast on the old wooden table. Sweet rolls, orange marmalade, a pot of steaming coffee. She smiled, her voice gentle as the breeze. "Mom, about selling the house, don't worry. Let me handle everything. The only thing you need now is rest." I looked at her and suddenly felt a strange warmth, as if last night's doubts had only been a nightmare. Rachel, my daughter-in-law, looked caring, as though she wanted to protect me in these grieving days. I nodded, forcing a smile, though a corner of my heart still felt uneasy. When I stood to clear the dishes, Rachel quickly stopped me, sweeping them up herself. "No need, Mom," she said sweetly but firmly. "From now on, let me handle it. You just go rest in your room." I was startled, wanted to say something, but simply watched her carry the dishes away. Rachel's attitude made me feel both cared for and shut out of my own home. I told myself she only wanted to help, to ease the burden on me. Her whispered, "Such a hassle at the funeral." That secret call last night, I forced myself to believe it was all a misunderstanding, that Rachel meant no harm. But that warmth didn't last long. At noon, as I sat in the living room flipping through Daniel's old photo album, Rachel came in holding a glossy brochure. She laid it in front of me, her voice sweet. "Mom, I found a wonderful place. This senior living community has lots of friends your age, plus doctors on staff all the time. You'd be much happier and more comfortable there." My heart stopped as I stared at the photos of smiling seniors in green gardens, a nursing home. I had never imagined leaving this house, this place, filled with memories of Daniel, of our family. I wanted to refuse, to say I could still care for myself. But before I could speak, Emily burst in, her eyes red and swollen. "Mom," she nearly shouted, "Grandma doesn't want to go anywhere. She has to stay in this house." "I don't want her to leave either." Her voice shook, stubborn yet full of fear. My chest tightened. Emily was only 15, but she had already endured too much loss. Rachel pressed her lips together, annoyance flashing in her eyes. She grabbed Emily's hand and pulled her out, her voice low but sharp. Don't butt into adult matters. This is between your mother and your grandmother." The door slammed shut, leaving me alone with the cold brochure on the table. My trembling hand touched Daniel's photo, wondering if I was overreacting or if Rachel truly wanted to push Emily and me out of her life. That afternoon, Rachel kept at it. She opened the fridge, checking every item, jotting notes carefully into a notebook. "Every expense has to be managed," she said, without looking at me. "I'll keep the keys and the bank cards to make sure everything is safe. You don't need to worry about these things anymore." I stood there, feeling like little pieces of my freedom in this house were being taken away. I wanted to say I was still capable, that I didn't need anyone controlling me, but Rachel's cold, determined eyes silenced me. I just nodded and turned away, my heart heavy. By evening, I went to my room and turned on the TV for some noise to fight the loneliness, but before I could watch anything, Rachel walked in and quickly turned it off. "What's the point of watching so much, Mom? It'll ruin your eyes." Her tone was commanding. "Let me hold on to the remote." She slipped it into her pocket and walked out as if nothing happened. I sat there staring at the black screen, feeling as though the last bit of control had been taken from me. A suspicion began to grow inside me. Was Rachel caring for me or controlling me? That night, when I thought everyone was asleep, I heard Rachel's voice from the living room. She was speaking quietly, but in the silence every word was clear. "Don't worry, I'll convince her to sign soon." My heart stopped. Papers. Was she talking about selling the house or something else? I stood behind the door, holding my breath, my mind spinning. Daniel's letter replayed in my head. Rachel could not be trusted. I had tried to ignore it, tried to believe she was just grieving. But now, every word she spoke confirmed my deepest fear. I slipped quietly out to the garden, desperate for air, to escape the feeling of being trapped. The pale moonlight fell across the wooden fence. There stood Mrs. Miller, cigarette in hand, waving at me. "Rachel is so thoughtful," she said admiringly. "She wants to sell the house to take care of you. You're lucky to have such a daughter-in-law." I only nodded, but her curious eyes made me shiver. There was something probing in her tone, as though she knew more than she let on. "Rachel talks about you often." She lowered her voice. "She says you need rest, a quiet place. I think she's right. What do you think?" I forced a smile. "I haven't decided anything yet, Mrs. Miller. I'll think about it later." But inside I felt cornered. Back inside, my hand brushed the pocket where Daniel's letter still rested. I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. The next morning, I woke with a heart heavy as stone. I wrapped a few warm pancakes in a cloth and walked over to Mrs. Miller's house. I wanted to see her not exactly to chat, but to find out what she really knew about what Rachel had been saying. The door opened, and Mrs. Miller, her silver hair messy, greeted me with a smile. "Elizabeth, what a nice surprise." "And you brought something delicious?" she said cheerfully. I set the bundle on the table and sat down in the old wooden chair in her kitchen. She pulled up a chair across from me, her eyes curious. "I heard Rachel say you already agreed to sell the house," she said firmly but quietly. "Is that true?" I froze as if slapped. "I never said that," I answered, trying to stay calm though my heart raced. What had Rachel told her? Why would she say something I never agreed to? Mrs. Miller smiled, but her warmth was gone. Maybe Rachel misunderstood. She tilted her head, her eyes sharp. "But you really should think about it, Elizabeth. What's the point of a house this big for just you? At your age, it's too much to take care of. Rachel's right selling would make sense, especially for Emily's future." I clenched my fists under the table, holding back my anger. Mrs. Miller, this house holds Daniel's memories, I said, my voice trembling. I'm not thinking of selling, and if I ever do, it will be my decision. She shrugged and chuckled softly. All right, I was just saying. Rachel cares for you so much. You know she only wants the best. But her eyes glinted strangely, as if waiting for me to reveal more. I stood, excusing myself to prepare dinner, leaving her house with a weight of doubt pressing on me. A neighbor I had trusted for so many years, who once shared my hardships, now left me uneasy. As I stepped back into my own home, I saw Rachel already sitting in the living room. In front of her was a paper covered in words and numbers. She handed it to me, her voice sweet but insistent. Mom, I just spoke with the company. The house has already been listed. All that's left is for you to sign here. I froze, my hands trembling as I held it. The numbers and clauses blurred before my eyes. Rachel had gone this far without asking me, without respect. Rachel, I croaked, I never agreed to sell the house. Why the rush? Her face flickered with irritation, but she quickly forced a smile. Mom, I just want this done quickly. We need the money. Emily needs money for school. Just sign, and I'll take care of everything. Her voice was sugary, but behind it was suffocating pressure. Later that afternoon, as I tried to steady myself in my room, Emily slipped in quietly, her phone in hand, her face pale with worry. Grandma, she whispered firmly, Mom texted someone. Sell fast before she changes her mind. I looked at the screen, Rachel's words glowing clearly. Will you really sell the house? I read, every word cutting like a knife. I had never agreed, never once mentioned selling, and yet Rachel was acting as though it was already decided. Emily, I put my hand on her shoulder. I have never agreed to sell the house. I don't understand Mom anymore, she whispered, tears blurring her eyes. She says you don't need this house, that you should rest somewhere else, but I want you here with me. Her words choked me. I held Emily close, fighting back my tears. My granddaughter, who had already lost her father, was now caught between her mother and me. I wanted to tell her about Daniel's letter, but I knew it wasn't the time. That night I couldn't sleep. The cool night breeze through the window did nothing to ease my unease. I pulled back the curtain, seeking some fresh air, but the sight outside froze my blood. Rachel and Mrs. Miller sat on the wooden bench in the yard, whispering under the pale moonlight. I hid behind the curtain, my heart pounding, straining to catch every word. As long as she signs, that's enough, right? Rachel's voice was low, sharp. I'll give you your share. Just keep pushing her. Tell her she shouldn't be alone, that this house is too big. Mrs. Miller sneered, her tone full of calculation. Don't worry, I know how to talk to her. I tried today, but Elizabeth is stubborn. She keeps talking about Daniel, about memories. You need to hurry before she starts to suspect. Rachel nodded, her hands clasped tight with tension. I know. Just a few more days, and I'll make her sign. If not, I'll find another way. I stood in the shadows, feeling my whole world collapse. The neighbor I trusted most, who once brought me food when Daniel was alive, was now in league with Rachel, plotting right there in my yard, before my eyes. Tears welled up, but I bit my lip hard, refusing to let them fall. I could not afford to appear weak. I could not let them win. Quietly, I returned inside, opened the drawer, and pulled out the envelope with Daniel's documents. I checked every paper, every line to be sure everything was intact. Then I placed the envelope into an old cloth bag, locking it in the metal box under my bed. That was Daniel's legacy, the final message my son had left me, and I would protect it at all costs. Before going to bed, I typed a short message to Attorney Harris. "We need to meet right away. I can't wait any longer." I hit send, my heart still racing, but inside me rose a new determination. Rachel and Mrs. Miller might think they had control of everything, but I was not someone so easily manipulated. For Daniel, for Emily, I would fight to the end. The next afternoon, as golden sunlight streamed through the window, I sat in my room with the phone in my hand. Rachel had taken Emily shopping, leaving the house in an eerie silence. I took a deep breath and used the chance to call Attorney Harris. His calm, steady voice came through the line like a ray of hope in the storm of doubt. "Elizabeth, are you all right?" I quickly told him everything. Daniel's letter, Rachel's whispered words, Mrs. Miller's scheme. "We have to meet," I said, my voice trembling. "Tomorrow, at your office, can we do that?" He agreed without hesitation. I hung up, my heart pounding. I knew I was stepping into a battle, but there was no turning back. At sunset, I heard the door open. Only Emily came home, her face clouded with sadness. She said Rachel had stopped by the bookstore and told her to come home first. I was about to ask more when I heard Emily's low, anxious voice in the living room. I moved quietly, pressing myself against the wall, and heard every word she said into her phone. "Mom says Grandma is hiding money in papers. She's sure Dad left something for her. I don't know who to believe anymore. Mom keeps saying Grandma isn't well, but she doesn't seem like what Mom says." Her words cut me to the core. My granddaughter, the child I loved most, was now caught between truth and lies. I wanted to run to her, hold her, and tell her everything Daniel's letter, the things I had overheard Rachel say, but I held back. Telling her now would only make her more confused. I returned quietly to my room, placing my hand on the cloth bag that held the letter, as though it were the only thing keeping me standing. That night I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. The cool night air drifting in through the window brought no peace. As I walked down the hallway toward the bathroom, I heard Rachel's voice from the kitchen. She was on the phone, her tone low, but every word calculated and icy. "Soon, I'll get the signature. All of the assets will be mine. She can't fight it." I froze, gripping the doorknob. My blood boiled. All of the assets. Rachel was talking about the Boston house, about the more than $2 million Daniel had left. I wanted to storm in, to scream that I knew everything, that she couldn't fool me, but I forced myself to stay calm. If Rachel realized I knew, she would change tactics, and I wasn't ready for that confrontation yet. The next morning, I sat in my room, holding a cold cup of coffee. Emily walked in with her notebook, her eyes weighed down as if she carried an unbearable burden. "Grandma," she whispered, her voice trembling, "is it true Dad left the money to you and not Mom?" I gasped, nearly dropping the cup. How much had she heard already? Maybe last night's call. I hadn't answered when Rachel suddenly appeared, her gaze sharp and cold. "Emily," she said, her voice sweet but heavy with authority, "you shouldn't bother Grandma. She's not clear-headed enough to remember things like that." Her words struck me like a slap. Not clear-headed. Rachel was trying to paint me as a confused old woman so Emily would doubt me. My granddaughter looked at her mother, then at me, her eyes hesitant, saying nothing. She turned away, slamming her door shut. The sound echoed through my chest like a hammer. Emily, the child I adored, was being manipulated by her own mother. I felt helpless, unsure how to bring her back to my side without hurting her even more. Rachel turned to me, her lips curling into a cold smile. "See, Mom? Even Emily thinks you shouldn't keep anything. Better to sell the house. You're old, why hold on to it? You can't take it with you when you die." My blood surged, but I bit my lip to stay calm. I couldn't let her see me falter. I opened the drawer, pulled out the electric and water bills for the month, and set them in front of her. "If you really want to care for this family," I said firmly, "start with the small things. From now on, I won't be paying these." Rachel frowned as she picked up the papers, her eyes flashing with anger. "You always make things difficult for me," she muttered, barely containing her rage. "But fine, I'll handle it. You just rest." She turned away, but I saw her hand tighten around the bills as if she wanted to rip them to shreds. The next morning, I woke with a heart clenched tight. I wrapped a worn scarf around my shoulders, pulled a wide-brimmed hat low, and left the house under the excuse of going to the market. Each step down the street felt like walking into a battle whose outcome I couldn't yet see, but I couldn't delay any longer. Daniel's letter, Rachel's venomous words, Mrs. Miller's betrayal, they all drove me to act. I hailed a cab to Harris's office, my heart trembling with both fear and resolve. His office was in a modest building, simple but orderly. He greeted me with a warm smile, but his serious eyes already seemed to know I carried something grave. He invited me to sit and spread out a copy of Daniel's will before me. "Elizabeth," he said gravely, "Daniel wrote very clearly, the Boston house and the $2 million are yours. There is no mention of Rachel at all. He thought it through carefully to protect you, and Rachel Snail. Emily." I looked at my son's handwriting on the page, tears welling in my eyes. Even at death's door, Daniel had thought of me, of his daughter. But Harris leaned closer, his voice lower. "There is one problem, though. Rachel could petition the court for guardianship if they declare you incompetent. Then she would control all of the assets." My hands clenched, my blood chilling. "What if Rachel forges documents?" I asked, my voice shaking. "She already told Emily I'm not in my right mind." "She's plotting something, I'm certain." Harris nodded, his face darkening. "We'll need witnesses, proof to fight back. If she forges anything, we have to show it. I'll start looking into whether someone is helping her in secret. But you must be extremely careful, Elizabeth. Don't let her suspect you're on to her." I left the office with my thoughts in turmoil. His words were both a warning and a glimmer of hope. I wasn't alone in this fight, but as I crossed the street, I didn't notice a man in the cafe across the way, secretly taking my photo. Lost in thought, I never saw his eyes following me. By midday, I returned home. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Rachel waiting in the living room, her eyes icy. "Did you go shopping? Then where's the food? Who did you meet?" she asked, her voice calm but filled with reproach. I forced myself to answer lightly, though my heart pounded. "I just visited an old friend." Rachel laughed dryly, the sound sending chills down my spine. "A friend? In a suit, with a briefcase, sitting in a lawyer's office? Since when did you have lawyer friends?" Her words cut sharp and precise, too accurate to be coincidence. How did she know I'd just been at a law office? Had she been following me? I wanted to ask, but Emily's doubtful eyes from the staircase froze me. She stood clutching the railing, looking at me as if waiting for an explanation. I couldn't let her see me waver. "Just one of Daniel's friends?" I said evenly. I wanted to talk about him. Rachel frowned but said no more, turning away with a forced smile. That night, as I tried to sleep, Rachel knocked on my door. She walked in holding a stack of papers, her voice sweet enough to make my skin crawl. "Mom, just sign these, and I'll handle everything. You won't have to worry about a thing." My heart raced as I held the papers. On the cover was the logo of a neurology clinic and the bold words, "Legal Guardianship," standing out like a threat. Exactly what Harris had warned me about. Rachel was trying to prove I was no longer capable of managing my own affairs. I looked up, feigning confusion, meeting her eyes. "I'll sign," I said slowly. "But let me think about it first." Rachel pulled the papers back, still smiling but unable to hide her irritation. "Think it over," she said coldly. "But the chance won't last forever." She left me there, shaken but knowing I had narrowly avoided her trap. That night I sat by the window, unable to sleep, watching darkness swallow the street. The wind rattled the branches, but it couldn't blow away the fear crushing my chest. Just as I was about to rise, I heard whispers by the gate. I pulled the curtain back and hid in the shadows. There was Rachel, speaking with Mrs. Miller. "She's met with a lawyer," Rachel said, her voice tense. "We have to act before it's too late." Mrs. Miller nodded, her hands clenched. "Don't worry," she said. "I'll keep talking to her, wear her down. You just have the papers ready." I froze. Rachel wasn't just manipulating me, she had pulled Mrs. Miller into her plan. I returned to my room, my hands shaking as I placed them on the box where Daniel's will was kept. I knew my time was running short. The next morning, I stood in the kitchen, my hands trembling as I poured coffee, trying to shake off the cold that had seeped into my bones. Even the strong aroma of coffee couldn't ease the dread pressing down on me. Every day now felt like walking on a tightrope, one misstep away from collapse. Emily's hurried footsteps pulled me back to the moment. She entered, her brow furrowed, her eyes swollen as if she had been crying. "Grandma," she nearly shouted, "why did Dad leave all the money in the house to you? Mom says you've been lying to her all this time." Her words stabbed straight into my heart. I froze, nearly dropping my cup. I wanted to explain, to say I hadn't hidden anything, that everything Daniel left was to protect her. But before I could speak, Rachel swept in like a storm. Wrapping her arm around Emily, she put on her fake smile. "Sweetheart," her voice was sugary but cold, "Grandma is just holding it. We have to think of your future. Both Grandma and I want the best for you." Emily pushed her mother's arm away, her face brimming with defiance. "Yesterday I saw you texting someone," she nearly shouted. "You said Grandma is keeping all of Dad's assets. You said if she won't hand them over, you'll prove she's not in her right mind. Did you think I wouldn't understand?" I could hardly breathe. Emily knew. In her innocence and pain, she had stumbled onto the truth I had wanted to shield her from. Rachel froze, her face stiff, panic flashing in her eyes. "What nonsense are you talking about?" she snapped, her voice sharp as a blade. "I told you not to interfere in adult matters. Go upstairs now. Don't bother Grandma anymore." Emily looked at her mother, then at me, her eyes burning with anger and confusion. "I don't trust anyone anymore," she cried, then ran up the stairs, her footsteps echoing through the house. I stood there, my cup still in hand, my chest shattering. Emily, my beloved granddaughter, trapped between her mother and me, and I didn't know how to pull her back without breaking her even more. Rachel turned to me, her eyes cold. "See?" she said evenly, mocking. "The girl is confused. Don't make this worse." She walked away, but I saw her hand clenched tight, barely holding back her rage. I wanted to scream that she was the one hurting Emily, but I bit my lip and stayed silent. I knew it wasn't the right time to fight. That afternoon, I sat in my room, trying to sort through the chaos in my mind. A soft knock came at the door. Emily stepped in, her eyes swollen, her voice shaking. She slammed her notebook onto the table. "Grandma," she almost begged, "you have to tell me the truth. What did Dad leave you? I want to hear it from you. I'm part of this family too. Why are you and Mom hiding things from me? Or do you think I'm too young to understand?" Looking at her, I saw Daniel's image when he was young, stubborn, but full of love. She was desperately searching for something to hold on to in the storm of truth and lies. I opened a drawer and pulled out an old photograph. Daniel holding her as a baby, his smile bright under the sundae. I placed the photo in her hand, my voice breaking. "Your father loved you more than anything. He only wanted everything to be safe. I can't tell you everything right now, but I promise one day you'll understand. All I want is to protect you, just as your father once did." Emily stared at the photo, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know who to believe anymore," she whispered, then turned away, slamming the door. I heard her sobs echo through the house, my heart shattering. I wanted to chase after her, to hold her and tell her everything, but I knew it wasn't the right time. If I told her about Daniel's letter, about Rachel's scheme, Emily might not be able to bear it. That night, Rachel entered my room, carrying a tray of food. The smell of fresh cornbread filled the air, but her voice was cold as ice. "Mom," she said, setting the tray down. "Emily's at a sensitive age, easily influenced. Don't confuse her more, and don't think you can pull her to your side." Her words stung like a slap. I nodded silently, but when she turned, I saw a piece of paper sticking out of her pocket. A medical file, with the logo of a strange hospital printed clearly on it. My heart raced. Was this what Rachel planned to use to prove I was no longer competent? I wanted to snatch it, to demand answers, but I held back. I needed time. I needed evidence. The next morning, a letter from the court arrived in my mailbox. My hands shook as I picked it up, my heart pounding. The envelope was thick, sealed with the court's stamp. Opening it, each word felt like ice. Rachel had officially filed for legal guardianship over me. I stood frozen in the living room, as though the ground had collapsed beneath me. Rachel, the daughter-in-law I had once treated as my own child, now wanted to strip me of my freedom, to turn me into a helpless old woman with no control. My eyes burned with tears, but I pressed my lips together, refusing to break. I shoved the letter into my bag and hurried to Attorney Harris's office. His office was just as I remembered, simple but dignified. He sat behind his desk, frowning as he read the letter. "Elizabeth," he said gravely, "you must prepare yourself. Rachel has almost certainly included falsified medical records, claiming you have severe memory loss." His words cut like a knife, confirming my worst fear. Harris flipped through the attached documents, his face tightening with every page, from the doctor's signature to the seal to the hospital name. "They're all fake," he said firmly. "This hospital doesn't exist. The doctor doesn't exist. Rachel is playing an extremely dangerous game." I sat silent, gripping the arm of the chair, fighting back tears. "How could she do this to me?" I whispered hoarsely. "I once treated her like a daughter." I wanted to believe she was only grieving Daniel, but now she wants to take everything, even Emily. Harris placed a hand on my shoulder, his eyes full of sympathy. "We'll fight back," he reassured me. "But you must stay calm. Don't let Rachel know you've uncovered her plan. We need more time to gather evidence." When I returned home, I felt like a soldier back from battle, exhausted but unable to rest. As I stepped into the living room, I saw Rachel sitting at the dining table, papers spread before her. She looked up, smiling as if nothing were wrong. "Mom," she said sweetly, though her tone was icy, "the court will be contacting you soon. Don't worry. I just want to make things easier for you." I couldn't hold back anymore. I stepped forward, meeting her gaze. "Who signed these papers, Rachel?" I demanded, my voice stronger than I expected. "They say I have memory loss, that I'm not competent. Who forged them?" Rachel's eyes flashed with panic, but she quickly regained composure. She smirked, her tone mocking. "What are you talking about? Sometimes you just have to do what's necessary. You shouldn't worry. You're old, let me take care of everything." "Take care of everything?" My voice rose, my blood boiling. "You mean forging papers to strip me of my rights? Telling people I'm not in my right mind? Rachel, I once treated you like my own daughter. And this is how you repay me?" Rachel shot up from her chair, her eyes sharp as blades. "Stop pretending to be innocent," she shouted. "You've been hiding Daniel's assets, keeping everything for yourself. Did you think I wouldn't know? Everything I'm doing is for Emily. For this family." The living room door burst open. Emily stood there, her eyes wide, her face pale. "Mom!" Her voice shook. "How could you do this? How could you say Grandma isn't competent?" "She's not what you say!" Rachel spun around, screaming. "Be quiet, Emily. You don't understand anything. Everything I do is for you, for your future." "But Emily," shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. She bolted out of the house, leaving behind an air so heavy it felt ready to shatter. That night, I sat by the window, looking out into the yard. Emily sat on the wooden bench, speaking into her phone. Her voice choked. "I don't know who to trust anymore. Grandma and Mom keep fighting. It's horrible. Everything's upside down. I just wish things were like before, when Dad was still alive." Her words pierced my heart. Emily, my beloved granddaughter, was trapped between truth and lies, and I didn't know how to protect her without hurting her further. An hour later, after Emily had gone back inside, I saw Rachel slip quietly out to the gate. Mrs. Miller stood there under the dim yellow light. Rachel shoved a thick envelope into her hand. "When the court asks," Rachel whispered, "just say Elizabeth forgets things, that she gets confused. That's all." Mrs. Miller nodded, her voice low but calculating. "Don't worry. I know what to say. Just make sure I get my share." I hid behind the curtain, my body trembling, feeling the world collapse. Rachel wasn't just forging documents, she was bribing neighbors to testify falsely. She had gone too far, dragging in people I had once trusted. I returned to my room and sat by the steel chest, placing my hand on Daniel's envelope. His letter, his final words, were the only thing holding me up. I knew the legal battle was about to begin, and I had to be ready. For Daniel, for Emily. I wouldn't let Rachel win. Closing my eyes, I whispered into the darkness, "My son, I'll keep my promise. I'll protect everything you left behind." On the morning of the hearing, I woke with the weight of the world on my shoulders. Looking into the mirror, I saw a face lined with age, eyes tired, but still holding a fire. Today I would face Rachel, face her lies, and this would be my last chance to protect Daniel's legacy and Emily. I dressed in a simple black dress, draped a shawl over my shoulders, and left with Harris, my heart heavy but resolute. The courtroom was cold, the atmosphere heavy like an approaching storm. I sat beside Harris, my hands clenched, my eyes fixed on Rachel. She was already there, sitting across from me, her face cold but confident. Emily sat beside her, her eyes red, her anxiety plain. I wanted to reach out, to tell her it would be all right, but her doubtful gaze tore at my heart. She was caught between her mother and me, unsure who to believe. The hearing began. Rachel stood, her voice calm but dramatic. She presented a thick medical file, placing it before the judge. "Your Honor," she said firmly, "my mother-in-law, Elizabeth, is no longer competent to manage her assets. I ask the court to grant me guardianship so I can protect the family's property and care for her." She turned toward me, her eyes full of fake compassion. "She forgets things, gets confused. I only want what's best for her and for my daughter, Emily." The judge nodded, flipping through the file, his face stern. My heart stopped. Everything was tilting toward Rachel. Then Mrs. Miller, the neighbor I had once trusted, raised her hand to speak. She stepped to the stand, her voice trembling but theatrical. "Your Honor, I've lived next to Elizabeth for many years. She often forgets small things, like locking the door or paying bills. Once she even called me by the wrong name. I truly worry about her condition." My blood boiled. Every word from Mrs. Miller was another knife. I wanted to shout that she was lying, that Rachel had paid her to give false testimony. But Harris placed a steady hand on my shoulder, his eyes signaling me to stay calm. I bit my lip until it bled, fighting tears as my heart broke. When Rachel and Mrs. Miller finished, Harris stood. His voice rang out, strong and unwavering. "Your Honor, we have evidence that the medical records Rachel submitted are falsified." The courtroom erupted. Harris presented a packet of documents, his words firm and precise. "Here is official confirmation from the hospital, along with the testimony of the real doctor, proving Elizabeth is in perfect health. Furthermore, the hospital Rachel cited does not exist. The signatures, the seals, every detail is forged." The judge frowned, taking the papers from Harris, flipping through them with suspicion. He looked at Rachel, his voice stern. "How do you explain this discrepancy?" Rachel stood frozen, her face pale, her eyes wide with panic. Maybe it was just a small mistake," she stammered. "I was only repeating what the doctor said. I don't know anything about forgery." But her voice shook, the confidence she had before completely gone. The debate grew more intense. Harris's steady voice dismantled every one of Rachel's claims. I sat there, my heart pounding between hope and fear. The tide was turning, but I knew Rachel wouldn't give up so easily. Just then, Emily suddenly stood, holding a folded letter in her hand. Her voice trembled but was firm. "Your Honor, this is a letter from my father, Daniel. I found it by chance under my grandmother's pillow while cleaning her room. He wrote clearly, 'Everything she keeps is to protect his daughter. Rachel is not to touch anything.'" The courtroom erupted in a wave of whispers. Rachel lunged forward to snatch the letter, but the judge was quicker. He took it and read aloud, his voice solemn. "Mother, I leave you the house in Boston and the savings account to protect Emily. I do not trust Rachel. She has changed, and I don't want her to handle anything I've left behind. Keep this secret until the time is right." I stared at Emily in disbelief. My granddaughter, the one I loved most, had found Daniel's letter. I wanted to run to her, to hug her tight, to tell her how proud I was. Emily looked back at me, her voice choked. "Grandma, I'm sorry. I believed Mom for too long," Rachel screamed, her face twisted in rage and fear. "Everything belongs to me. I sacrificed my whole life for this family. Why didn't he trust me? Why does she get to keep everything?" The judge struck the gavel, his voice cold. "Mrs. Rachel, control yourself. The court will open an investigation into your falsified documents. This hearing is adjourned." I walked out with Emily. For the first time in weeks, I felt relief. She held my hand, her small fingers still trembling. "Grandma," she whispered, "I don't want to lose you." I held her close, tears streaming down my face. "I don't want to lose you either. I'll protect you, just like your father wanted." Outside, the sunlight warmed my face, though it couldn't erase the scars in my heart. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time I wasn't alone. Emily had chosen to stand by me, and Daniel's letter was the guiding light restoring my faith. I knew the road ahead was still long, but for Daniel, for Emily, I would keep fighting. A few days after the hearing, the atmosphere at home felt cleansed. Rachel packed her things and quietly left one foggy morning. She said nothing, just dragged her suitcase to the door, head bowed, unable to look at me or Emily. I stood at the doorway, watching her figure fade into the mist, my heart a mix of relief and faint sorrow. Rachel had once been my daughter-in-law, once a part of our family. But her lies and schemes had destroyed everything. Emily stood beside me, her small hand gripping the railing tightly. "I don't want to go with Mom," she said softly but firmly. "I want to stay with you." I pulled her into my arms, tears spilling after being held back for so long. I felt as though I had regained a piece of my family. Mrs. Miller, once a friend and trusted neighbor, now avoided me. After the hearing, word spread quickly about the money Rachel had paid her to lie on the stand. Every time I stepped into the garden, she rushed to close her gate, avoiding eye contact. Once, our eyes met over the fence. Hers were full of regret, but I turned away. I wasn't angry, but the trust was gone, and I knew I would never see her the same way again. I went with Attorney Harris to the bank to finalize the paperwork for the Boston house and Daniel's $2 million. Sitting in the small office, I signed page after page, my hands trembling. Each signature was my promise that Daniel's legacy, his final message, had been safeguarded. When it was done, Harris looked at me and smiled. "Daniel trusted the right person. He set up everything perfectly to protect you and his daughter." His words made my throat tighten. I thought of Daniel's letter, of the love woven into every word, and I knew I had done the right thing. I had kept my promise to my son. Leaving the old house wasn't easy, but I knew I needed a new beginning. I sold the place, filled with Daniel's memories, and moved into the Boston home. It was spacious, bright, with wide windows looking out onto a quiet street. At first, I feared it would feel cold and empty, like the old house had after Daniel passed. But Emily changed everything. She brought laughter, stories from school, even moments of stubbornness that made me both frustrated and tender. Emily turned the house into a home, and I knew I was no longer alone. I rehired Margaret, the housekeeper who had been with us since Daniel was a child. Rachel had dismissed her after Daniel's death, but I never forgot her loyalty. Margaret walked in with her familiar smile, immediately rolling up her sleeves to clean and cook. "Mrs. Elizabeth, this house needs me, and I need a place to come back to," she said warmly. Margaret became not just a helper, but a companion. On long nights, she listened as I poured out my heart, helping me regain the strength I thought I had lost. I began joining a group of older women at the local church. We met weekly to cook, sew, and share our life stories. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere. These women, with their stories of loss, hope, and resilience, reminded me I wasn't the only one who had battled pain. One afternoon, while making bread, an elderly woman squeezed my hand and said, "Elizabeth, you're stronger than you think. Daniel must be so proud of you." I smiled, tears sliding down my cheeks. For the first time, I felt I was living not just to survive, but to continue my story. With Daniel's $2.8 million, I began funding scholarships for underprivileged students in the neighborhood. I remember Daniel once saying he wanted to help those in need, and I wanted to make that dream real for him. Every time I saw those children receive scholarships, their eyes shining with hope, I felt Daniel's smile again. I no longer lived just for myself, but to carry forward what my son had left behind. Emily grew closer to me each day. She often sat by me in the evenings, sharing school stories, new friends, and her dreams. Once, she asked for help with a history assignment. We spent hours together, laughing as I told her about the old days. Emily was no longer that lost child. She had regained her trust, and I knew it was thanks to Daniel's love that still surrounded her. I quietly set up a trust fund for Emily, known only to her and Harris, to ensure her future would never fall into anyone else's hands, even after I was gone. One night at dinner, Emily suddenly said, "Grandma, I want to study law someday. I want to protect people like you." My heart melted. "I believe you'll do better than anyone," I told her, placing my hand on her shoulder and feeling Daniel's strength flowing through her. When I returned to my room, I paused before Daniel's photo on the shelf. His eyes were as kind as ever. "My son," I whispered, "I've kept my promise to protect Emily, and I'll keep doing so until my last breath." Tears rolled down my cheeks, but this time they were tears of peace. That night, I sat by the window of my new home, gazing at Boston's endless lights. The battle had ended, but my life continued. No longer days of control and fear, but the life of a grandmother, free, steady, stronger than ever. I knew Daniel was smiling somewhere, and at last, I had found myself again. Perhaps after everything, I've come to realize that true love isn't about what we keep, but how we protect each other when storms strike. Daniel is gone, but his love still lives in me and in Emily. Families aren't always perfect, but we have the choice to cherish what's left. I've learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the will to stand up even when your heart trembles. I believe every family has shadows, cracks that can't easily be healed, but it's through them we discover who truly stands by us. And what about you? In a family, what do you think matters most, money, pride, or love and trust? Share your thoughts below, because maybe your story can light the way for someone who's lost. And if you'd like to stay with me, to keep listening, keep learning from these everyday stories full of meaning, join me again in the next video, because I believe each story is a small light, and when we light them together, the darkness is no longer so frightening.